All right. Hey guys, it's been a hot minute, right? Haven't been around. I know. I've had an awful lot to share, and that's largely because I've just been at home working and looking after my child, and not had an awful lot of content to share. However, I am moving house soon, so I will have an awful lot of content to share. And with that said, I thought I would tackle the subject of home ownership, and particularly the subject of shared ownership. And the reason I want to tackle this is because I happened upon a video that I think it was done by, I can't remember the name of the person, I really can't now. But anyway, when you start going in YouTube, you can end up down a rabbit hole of things that you didn't really intend to, search for. Anyway, because I came across this video about shared ownership. And it was really quite negative about the merits of shared ownership. So I'm just going to explain, first of all, what is shared ownership. So basically, shared ownership is normally a government-backed scheme or supported by some sort of public finance in which you want to buy a property, but you can't afford the full value of the property, or the bank won't lend you enough money to buy the full value of the property. So an example would be, you see a property that is £300,000. You could only afford, let's say, 25% of that, which means that you would need a mortgage for £60,000. The remainder, 240,000 that you don't, that you were not able to finance through a mortgage, would be, you would pay rent on the remainder of 240,000. Now that can vary by percentage. So I'm not going to go into all the different schemes because that would be a whole long ass video. But essentially, you have a mortgage on the part that you can afford to finance, and then the remainder would be covered by a rental payment to whoever owns the other part of the property. So normally in this case, in normal circumstances, it would be a housing association. So housing association are kind of, I guess, what you might call a arm's length or management organization, supposedly not a directly controlled and managed organization by the government or local government. It is supposed to be independent, and they manage properties on behalf of the government slash local councils. So normally most of your shared ownership schemes are going to be through them. So the reason I wanted to talk about this subject is because I have personal experience of it. So back in 2006-7, I purchased a property through the shared ownership scheme. I am moving house, and I've been doing a lot of research around houses, and also I've just been nosy because I've seen a lot of people doing house tours and being really excited about purchasing their first property, and congratulations to all those people that have managed to get onto the housing ladder. I know how hard that is. But some people have been using the sort of help to buy scheme, or shared ownership scheme, and then I've also then, as a result, through the the rabbit hole of YouTube, seen quite a lot of negative coverage and negative reports around shared ownership. So yes, it has its good sides, and it also has its bad sides. So from my personal experience, this is what happened. Back in 2006, I started searching for a home, and back then I wasn't earning an awful lot of money. I think I want to say I might have been earning something around 22,000, maybe 25,000, somewhere in that order. And I was looking for a property to buy. So I went along and had a look at some of the new build properties. And at the time, I wasn't really too keen on an awful lot of them because I just didn't like the the apartment feel where you're in a block of other apartments or flats, and it just felt very, very enclosed, and I just didn't like that. So I went and had a look at a website called Share to Buy, and on there they had a number of property options available. And so I went along and I looked at this flat that was a top floor Victorian flat. So I decided to bid on it, as they say. There were also a number of other schemes available, but I chose this one because it had 2 bedrooms. And I always sort of, in my head, I was like, well, if anything ever goes wrong, I can always rent out the 2nd bedroom. So I moved in, not intending to have a roommate or anything like that. Did 50%, purchased 50% of the property. The property was 165 at the time. And so I bought half of it, which would, so that would have been 82,000 and a half that I purchased that property for. The remainder, I would pay a housing association a rent payment. So I think that amount was about £400. So my memory's a little bit hazy. But I had a mortgage that I believe was like sub £1,000. And then I had the mortgage, the rent amount that was about 400-ish pounds. So in total, my monthly payments were 1,400 and something a month. Now, shortly after purchasing that property, I got another job, which gave me quite a significant pay increase, made things a lot more manageable in terms of being able to afford the mortgage. Anyway, so fast forward, I started to think a lot more about, how am I going to sort of exit this scheme? So the thing about shared ownership is that you purchase the percentage that you can afford at the time. When you can afford it, you can staircase, and basically you buy more shares of the property. So originally, if I had 50%, if I wanted to staircase, I could staircase by 25%. So I think you can staircase for 25% increments. So the next step for me would have been to staircase up to 75,000. Now, the downside is that when you do want to do that, you not only have to pay solicitors' fees to staircase up. So, more than likely, you're probably going to pay around £1,200, maybe £2,000 for a solicitor. Then you would then have to get a mortgage. So you can either get a broker to help you with that additional staircase, but normally you probably wouldn't bother. You would just go directly to your bank to staircase up. The downside, as I was saying, is that you end up paying the amount that the property has increased by. So in my example, so if I purchased the property the original purchase price was 165, to buy, let's say to buy them out, and the property had increased to 200,000, that means that I would have to give them half of the increase from the original amount, which was 165, and to the new amount, which is 200,000 in this hypothetical scenario. So that means I would have to split with them £35,000 in equity. But this is because I had 50% share. So they get 50% of the value increase. I get 50% of the value increase. If I had only bought 25%, they would get 75% of the value of the increase, and I would get 25% of the value of the increase. So in my scenario, to buy them out, rather than staircase up to 25%, I staircased up to 100%. So I just did it in one go. And that was because, between the time that I purchased the property to the time that I then staircased out, I got another pay increase. And then on top of that, I also had a roommate. So I did eventually get a roommate. And the reason was to be able to build up savings, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to build up savings. Originally, I had intended to build up savings for the purposes of doing some work to the property. Because, when I got the property, it was kind of like, let's say, basic refurbishment, right? So it had like the cheapest chipboard kitchen, which is still there to today. Cheapest chips carpet, that became threadbare after 2-3 years. just everything was just done on the cheap. So the intention was, by saving and saving and saving, I would be able to build up enough money to be able to do some repairs, and also the windows needed replacing, and yeah, blah 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 blah. Anyway, so that's the reason why I staircased to 100%, and also I had a roommate to help me. Now, despite the fact that I had savings, when I came to staircase up to 100%, the value of the property was £180,000. So it hadn't actually increased by a significant amount. And obviously, bear in mind that between 2006 and 5 years later, when I purchased, when I bought the property outright, so we're talking 2011, 2012, there had been a recession in the middle. So house prices had dipped in 2008 by quite a significant amount. I was lucky not to be in negative equity, if I'm entirely honest. So when I came to buy out the housing association, all I had to pay, when I say all, was £180,000 was the value of the property. So that meant, in this instance, that they got, there was £15,000 of equity, and they got nine grand of that, and I got 9 grand of that, and then I had to raise finance for the remainder. Now, the downside of doing that is obviously that they get 9 grand for basically doing nothing. In the meantime, I've also been paying them a rent. Sorry, I've been paying them rent on the amount that I didn't own, and then on top of that, they've also got £9,000 out of me. Now, I'm lucky that this is back in what seems like a very long time ago, and it is if you're literally just coming out of university. 2006 is a very long time ago, but paying 180 for a property is dirt cheap, because that same property now is not 180,000. Like, you wouldn't get any 2-bedroom flat in zone 3 for 180. It just wouldn't even happen. So that's pretty much my story. Now, personally, I had no negative experiences of shared ownership, other than a couple of things. Number one, there is a service charge for the street properties. So unlike the brand new build ones where you do pay a service charge, they actually turn up and do regular cleaning and maintenance. Nobody ever turned up to do any cleaning, even though in the lease, the amount that I pay is supposed to be for cleaning and maintenance. I've never seen a cleaner in the entire time I've owned that flat. The same with, and now they did do some repairs. So for example, the roof was leaking, so they did turn up and they repaired it, but each time they just did like a real patch job and never really did a very good job. And eventually, after about 3 or 4 times they came out, they finally fixed it properly. So I haven't seen any sort of leakages since. What else? Things like maintenance are primarily your responsibility. So, as I said, they put in really, really cheap units. They put in really cheap, the plumbing was done, basically not done very well. So I had plenty of leaks with, the bathroom, and I think I've probably spent about 10 to 15,000 pounds trying to source the location of this leak in the bathroom. But and also had various issues as a result, but whatever. Those are costs that I have to bear. And then they also didn't cover things like, obviously, the windows needed replacing. They don't cover stuff like that. So basically all the maintenance you are responsible for managing. So the thing you can say about the scheme is that unless you've got your head screwed on really right, it can be a trap. And the reason I say that is, if you purchase a brand new property, you will, number one, pay the premium of new. Because you could probably get a secondhand flat for less than that, because everything that's new normally charges a premium, right? But like with everything, if once somebody's lived in it, the value goes down. So there is that. Then on top of that, normally the maintenance charges tend to be quite high in a shared ownership flat, so you just need to be mindful of that. And yeah, it can be a trap, because often what happens is people get comfortable with just owning 25% or 50%. The years go by, they don't try and, overpay on the mortgage, which I would highly recommend. If you do go into any of these help to buy schemes or shared ownership schemes, you should overpay however much you can afford. If it's £50, then it's £50. If it's £100, it's whatever. However much you can afford to overpay by, you should overpay, because the sooner you get out of that scheme, the better. It is not a scheme for the long term, unless you intend to stay in that property for perpetuity, for forever, basically. It has its downsides. For me personally, it worked out okay for me. I still own that flat. It gives me passive income. Yeah, I mean, I really have no real massive complaints about the scheme. I would just say that if you are sensible and you have your head screwed on right, number one thing, if for any of those schemes, and I'll repeat it again, is to overpay on your mortgage. Overpay on the percentage that you own, so that when you are ready to potentially leave that scheme or to sell up or whatever it is, you have built up more equity that allows you to either staircase up to 100% all in one go, or you can exit the scheme without losing too much money. So and also, if you can avoid it, then try to go for a shared ownership scheme that is applicable to second-hand properties. The Help to Buy scheme, I believe, is only designed for brand new properties. So, like I said, you'll be paying the premium for the brand newness of it all. So go for second-hand. And there is a great website called Share to Buy that will help you, find those properties. And I'll leave the link in the description box. I hope that's been helpful if you ever, are considering these schemes. And leave me any questions and I will be sure to reply. Thanks for watching. Bye.